Good evening, good morning, good afternoon from wherever you're joining us today for this special session of the Africa Football Business Show brought to you by the Football Foundation for Africa in collaboration with Sports Legal. It's a crucial week for African football with the CAF General Assembly and elections set to take place in Rabat, Morocco later this week. We have two amazing gentlemen joining us today to discuss what has been very intriguing elections, if we can put it that way. It's been interesting maneuvers and deal making, and we hope to unpack some of these in this special session of the Africa Football Business Show. And before we go ahead, we just like to say thank you to our sponsors, that is OTB Africa, CBeyond Leadership Forum, and Parma Sports. And I now take this opportunity to let our guests introduce themselves, starting with you, Mr. Collins Okinyo.
Thank you so much to all viewers back at home. It's been a pleasure and a privilege to be in this great show. My name is Collins Okinyo. I'm an African football writer with an experience of about 15 years. I've been privileged basically to work at the top level in football in Africa, from the Africa Cup of Nations, the CHAN, Under-20, CAF Champions League, CAF Confederation Cup. I've been able to basically do all that, and in between, I've set up my own website, soccer25east.com. It's now 8 years old, basically writing about Africa. We've been giving out content throughout during this pandemic. I'm also running a company called AfriSport Digital. We're trying to incorporate basically communications and basically give ideas to federation on how they can basically improve their communication vis-a-vis their football development. So we've been doing a lot in football, and I believe that we're still having a long time to do it. And today's topic is wonderful. That's one of the things that we're really waiting for, because once the leadership at the top is the best, then you're sure that football is going to be run properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Collins. Samindra, kindly introduce yourself.
Good evening to everyone, wherever you are. It's a pleasure to be on this show. A little bit about myself. So I'm Sam Kunti, a football journalist from Leuven, Belgium. I graduated here from Leuven Law School before pursuing a master's degree in journalism at Columbia University. Today I write for a host of international media, including Forbes, World Soccer, Josimar, and Inside World Football. I'm a regular contributor as well to BBC Sport Africa, and I'm writing a book about Brazil's 1970 World Cup winning team. And as all of you, I've taken a very keen interest on developments in the last few weeks and in the build-up to the CAF elections on Friday in Rabat.
Yeah, thank you very much, Samindra, and it's a pleasure to have the two of you here. Thank you for accepting our invitation. So we have never seen this kind of thing in Africa before, in terms of the maneuvers and intrigues around the election, up until today, when our former CAF president Ahmad Ahmad has been banned from running in this particular election. Why is it generating so much interest? We'll start with you, Samindra.
Yeah, I think it's a crucial time for African football, and what is really at stake here is the independence of the African games. And my main concern and question is, are the African FAs and national members associations, are they happy to be under the tutelage of the World Federation, FIFA? Because that is the perception that is being created now. Do they want to stand up at all to perceived FIFA interference in these elections? And with Motsepe's rivals having stood down, that doesn't seem to be the case. And we have to be fair here. You know, FAs across Africa haven't managed themselves well, leaving themselves open to interference of FIFA, and that inability to be transparent, to apply good governance, and to be accountable at the national FA level across Africa is quite problematic, and it keeps FIFA in the driving seat.
Interesting, Samindra. Collins, your comments on this. I think the theme all along has been FIFA interference, if we can put it that way. Do we want to call it interference, or is it just FIFA's hand in these elections? Why are the stakes so high, and for who in this coming election?
Thank you very much. First of all, let me just give a chronology of events. I think we are in a very unprecedented times. And you know, sometimes you ask for what you get. Africa, one thing I want to tell myself is Africa should not blame FIFA. You know, we've got something that we want to blame FIFA. President Hamad was elected widely, over 34 votes, got it from the strongman hire too. He got the position. But after running for about 2 years in 2019, he rise to FIFA and tells them, guys, I've been able to run this federation. Please, can you come and help me? It is true, writing, it's the head of African football writing to FIFA, asking them, guys, I can't manage. What do you do? People say, don't you father, let's confuse them. From that point, because
sorry, your connection is not very clear, Collins.
Not clear? Am I clear? Can you hear me?
No, it's breaking up a bit.
I don't know. I can. Okay, let me try it. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Can you? Yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes. No, we can't. We can't hear you. So maybe we'll just continue the Samindra. Yeah, you've talked about the issue of independence of African football, and Collins there was just saying like yeah, Africa is coming from a 4 years where we feel the continent's game has been mismanaged, and this probably is the reason why we need to see FIFA stepped in the first place. We even remember the 6 months that we had Fatma Samura as a general delegate at Confederation of African Football. So is this FIFA's involvement justified in this case?
Well, obviously that has been the debate. FIFA stepped in with the general delegate, and at the time there was a lot of pressure on the World Federation as well to step in, intervene, and at least try to streamline, remodel perhaps, and clean up the African game. But to be honest, that is not really supposed to be FIFA's role, because when you look at this from a technical point of view, you have to remember that CAF itself and the Confederation of African Football as such is not a member of FIFA. It is an independent confederation. Now, the 211 national member associations, those 54 from Africa, those are members of FIFA, and FIFA, you could say, has a right to intervene to some extent, but this is definitely not the case with a confederation. So the unequivocal answer here should be no.
All right. Yeah, you have also touched on the 54 national association and these being under FIFA. Um, what's your take on how these national associations are being run, and even in their participation in this particular election process? We know before FIFA stepped in to ban Mr. Ahmad, he had already received how do you call it? He had already been endorsed by 46 out of the 54 national association. What does this say about the independence and ability of our national associations to run not only their own affairs, but those of the continent, or how their decisions affecting the continent's football?
Yeah, very pertinent question. First of all, I think it's fair to point out that this issue is not only an issue of African football. Mismanagement at FAs happens around the world. So I think painting this picture as if this is solely an African problem is totally inaccurate. Now that being said, obviously, you have to remember that Ahmed was Infantino's candidate back in 2017. What Zurich has realized over time is that he was very much a liability, and they have obviously now pushed him aside. And Infantino has backed Motsepe, his preferred candidate. What does that say about the African FA presidents and their associations? In my mind, I'm fairly disappointed that there has been no resistance in Africa at the way these elections, and it won't actually be an election on Friday, has unfolded. I think what happens here is FIFA sort of uses the stick and carrot approach. You have the stick, which is the ethics committee in Zurich, and the potentially imposing normalization committees, and then you have the major carrot, which is all the funding and all the money that FIFA has, which is channeled to national federations, to the Forward program, for example, to the recent COVID-19 fund. And so it's that sort of stick and carrot approach that leaves FIFA in the driving seat. And you can say that this perceived interference reeks of colonialism, and that is true to a certain extent. But at the same time, it's dramatic that African FAs have not been able, over the course of time, to organize in a proper, transparent, ethical way with the application of good governance.
So governance is really an issue in our national associations. Perhaps something that we need to prioritize in the coming years. Perhaps that's something that will be on Dr. Patrice Motsepe's place when he takes over on Friday, which seems like the case. Welcome back, Collins. Just to continue with you, and you were saying like, yeah, Ahmad invited FIFA really to come and help with the running of the confederation. But as Sam is putting it, probably it's not even in FIFA's. It's not FIFA's role to do this. But now going down into our national association, what can you say of the independence and capacity to act and to drive an agenda to develop football on the continent? Not just competition, but also in terms of developing the institutions themselves, the federations and the confederation in this case. Collins. Collins. Collins, are you with us?
Oh, thank you very much. It's good to be back. I think I had some issues with... Yes, I'm with you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm with
Go
you.
ahead.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Can't hear me. Oh no.
We can hear you. We can see you.
Can you hear me?
We can see you.
No, basically, no, it's good. Basically, basically what's happening is that there's a lot of sentiments which have come across, but from an insider point of view, I like also to give some explanation because I'm seeing a lot of things written via the internet. It's a narrative that has been picked. So it's basically very one-sided. But one thing, Africa was terribly divided. That is the truth of the matter. And it was going to a point where we're going to be divided according to linguistics, the Francophone and the Anglophone. And that is where we had gone to. So, we were in a situation whereby people were not talking to each other. I was in Cameroon. And let me tell you, it got to a point whereby people were not talking to each other. People were not greeting each other. It was a mess. So being a mess, when people were going to this particular election, it was clear that whatever the outcome from an election, people are going to continue fighting because the mood was bad. And let me tell you, when the mood is bad, you cannot develop African football. The problem is that there's been too much bickering for the past 4 years. And these 4 years, it's been one EXCO member versus the other. So, according to me and what I feel, we have to also look at it literally and what is happening on the ground, unlike what is not happening on the ground. What the elections, basically the consensus that happened between Motsepe, Senghor, and Yaya, people are saying it is coerced. Do you know I was in Cameroon when these guys were talking themselves? I was in a room where they were discussing these things. So a lot of people are not in the know-how. So I'm hearing guys saying it, but this is not a bad thing. This is something that we are looking at it in a different manner, holistic manner. Like, how can you bring Africa together? Must you fight that you're from? Because the people who are trying to transform that narrative or I know for us. So I think these guys reach a consensus in an election. I think it's a democratic thing because we've seen even in other democracies, coalition governments come, you see, whereby people, like-minded people come in. Then look at it holistically. Africa is tired of having these people who come, they see what is there in terms of the model, and they go away with it. But finally, there's a brilliant person in who basically wants to see how things are run. And there's a man who has come with a different image to clean Africa. Let me tell you guys, let's be the African continent right now, football, we are totally battered. Our image is gone. What we first need is a clean slate and a clean image. For what I see in someone like Motsepe, football is not a hobby anymore. And once corporates see that clean face there, that is where we need to start off. Let's clean. Africa has been stated so badly. But again, if you come back to FIFA, yes, you're saying that FIFA, but I'm looking at it. This Africa finds himself in a country they can only get. We are not UEFA whereby federations can manage themselves without even FIFA grants. We depend on FIFA grants. That is why you see us to hold on to FIFA's hand, it is normal. But I don't think even if FIFA were part of trying to talk, I don't think Motsepe will buy for anything against Africa. It is upon him to basically. But African football must be led with the African problems. We cannot do it because Europeans are doing it, because the Asians are doing it, but we have to do it in a different way. So I see it totally different. This coalition government, it is good for Africa because the brothers, the problems that are there, they're deeper than what you're doing here. In fighting so bad for football that it reached a time whereby people could not even agree. Right now, I'm seeing the team here. The smiles are back, and I think if this can be transformed into football development, then Africa right now will be on the right path. We, as much as we can say very many things, to be sincere, with a face like Motsepe in charge of football, we want to see a different aspect, because if you're successful in what you do, Look at his clubs, Mamelodi Sundowns. It's one of the best. So that model, now it is upon him now to come and transform African football, because he comes to the clean slate. He's not amongst this pickering and all this stuff that was happening. He's coming with a business mind. So this is the man that was basically going to drive. It is not Senghor is young, he has his time. But if you look at even Senegal, they even sometimes lack the sponsorship. So is there a man who can basically bring you all together? Then they decided that man is Motsepe. So let's give him the benefit of doubt. I think Africa right now, they'll be calm. The corporate world is watching, and suddenly interest. We want Africa. We want corporates to come in and basically help build this game. Because here, we know we still look at the 13 million deficit made by CAF. There's no confederation which has made such a deficit. Because of what? Because of people basically dipping their hands in the cookie jar, feeling that this one we have to take it. That is why Africa needs an independent person whose money is not anything, but it is a source of building football and not just getting your friends to Umbra and all that stuff. I think going forward and going from Friday, I think it's going to be a clean slate as much as people talk about FIFA, but I'm seeing faces that can be able to transform football as long as equal leaders are chosen during the EXCO and FIFA Council elections. That is my take.
Great take, Collins. And I think the theme here, the theme that you push here is really about African unity, and secondly, the need for us to have a cleaner image. Of course, coming from the previous presidency, African football has suffered a lot of reputational damage, and indeed there is a need to change that. But just to think of, did it really need to take Infantino's involvement for us to decide that it's going to be Motsepe? I know, Samindra, you followed Mr. Motsepe's campaign. How instrumental was Infantino's support in making sure they have these coalition arrangement in place?
Well, that's always that's $1 million question, I would say, and it's difficult to get to the bottom of it. But there is obviously circumstantial evidence. I would say Mr. Infantino has been crisscrossing Africa at a rapid pace in recent weeks on a private jet provided by Qatar. FIFA also sent two of their delegates or representatives to Rabat at the moment that the so-called Rabat Pact was formed. So there is a lot of circumstantial evidence, at least. But one thing I would like to point out, and Collins is very confident that Mr. Motsepe represents a new face for Africa, and that with all his business acumen, he can sort of move African football and CAF forward. My take on that is a little bit different. If we look at Mr. Motsepe's history in African football, it's been around for almost two decades, but I never get the sentiment, and Collins will definitely find this maybe strange, but I never get the sentiment that he's very knowledgeable about the actual game, and we saw that at his manifesto launch as well. It seemed as if his 10-point plan had been hastily assembled. Now remember that he acquired Mamelodi Sundowns in 2004, and he went through a raft of advisors at his club, and he appointed coaches like Johan Neeskens and Justo Stoichkov on the advice of Johan Cruyff. And Mr. Motsepe is quite infatuated with the Barcelona style of play. He also appointed Frenchman Henri Michel. I think that was another one of his sort of vanity appointments. So his first decade at Mamelodi shows clearly that he surrounded himself with the wrong people. It's only when Pitso Motsepe, who we all know has a very strong personality, arrived that changed. He sort of Pitso was involved in everything that happened at the club, and he centralized decision making. Obviously, Mr. Motsepe had the final decision power, but Pitso was always involved. And then Motsepe got the results to back his policies and his ideas up, and we all know how dominant that Mamelodi are now, and they are being presented as this very successful club, but at the same time there's no real business model. I don't even know if Mamelodi have a proper budget. It's basically the owner who forks out all the money. You could almost compare him to a Roman Abramovich. But so from a business point of view, just pouring money, endless money, into a club to price out your main competitors. In this case, I assume Kaiser Chiefs and Orlando Pirates to a certain extent because of their historic legacy. But that's not really a viable business model, at least in my book. So an owner who surrounds himself, or who surrounded himself at least for a decade with the wrong people, and who simply keeps pouring money into a club, that doesn't inspire great confidence to me. So if we look strictly at what he has done with Mamelodi Sundowns, I'm not really convinced about his football background, in particular to navigate such a complex organization as CAF.
So you're saying CAF really represents a different ball game when it comes to management in this case. And yes, he is well respected businessman on the continent, a successful one for that matter. But you're right. Some people have poked questions into his abilities or his knowledge of African football, really. And I think in a recent interview, he said his is a stupid love for the game, and that's why he puts money in the game. Collins, what's your take on these in terms of how CAF represents a different ball game than Mamelodi Sundowns in South Africa for Mr. Motsepe?
First of all, let's be very clear that football development, in fact, the hardest stage is at the club level. The club level, it's a daily affair. It's a Monday to Friday affair. So, as my colleague has rightly pointed, Mamelodi Sundowns started, like any club, it started not on a very right footing, but finally they got it. And by the way, winning the biggest tournament in Africa, CAF Champions League, is not an easy feat. And to be sincere, right now, Mamelodi Sundowns players are some of the highly paid players in Africa. And that is what you want. You want money to trickle down to these players and let them know we want our talent to be retained in Africa, not our talent to go to Europe. So what basically Motsepe set up there, that is basically showing you that you have reached the club level. So what's the other level? The other level is the CAF level, because the CAF level is now taking yourself, because of course once he's the CAF president, it's by law, he's not going to be the chairman or president of Mamelodi Sundowns. So what I feel is I'm quite optimistic. Let me be very sincere, because I've heard what they have been talking, the plans on the ground, and the anxiety. When someone positive is coming to football, there's a lot of it. Of course, there are people, criticism must be there. That is generally, it has to be there, coming from different stakeholders. But when you're looking at where the state of African football is and where it has been, you envisage it, it's quite different, because you're talking about a person that has that passion. You see, then, when you're a leader, it doesn't mean that it's all you to do everything. As long as you have a stable team, a team that is knowledgeable, whether it's competitions, whether it's in the communications, whether it's in any other department, you're sure to succeed. And that is what has been lacking: leadership. Because once you have good leadership, then everybody must do their job. And the job right now is taking CAF away from where it was, that 13 million deficit, retaining it back to that financial profitability, then knowing that how can we now basically get ways of getting our own money? What projects do we start? Those are the things that Africa needs, because we've been so much dependent on FIFA. So much dependent on FIFA to a point that FIFA would come and basically help CAF to organize this tournament. That's why you see all these things you're talking FIFA. Because let me tell you, I keep on giving you money, you keep on misusing this money. I give you money for tournaments, I give you money for zonals. Then, sincerely speaking, this person keeps on giving you. He's going to come to govern you. But one thing I'm sure is that Motsepe and his team, as much as people are talking about FIFA, they have to be independent. This is the time to prove themselves. They've been given an opportunity, and the guy has basically said now he wants to transform this football. African football right now is at the lowest in terms of image and all that. We have to recover that immediately. And then what do you want? We want those corporates to basically come in. And this issue about Lagardère must now be resolved. Because imagine right now we are maybe in Kenya, but we can't watch some of the matches. That is absurd for an African confederation to do that. So these are some of the things that really must be tackled, because we see when Ahmad came in with a very good slate. But when he surrounded himself with people who basically wanted to benefit himself, because everyone wanted a portion of something. I want a portion of the referees. I want a portion of this. That is no longer going to be there, because you're getting a man who's used to success. He's getting in with a corporate mind, whereby the only one that he wants is success. Because Motsepe is not coming for money. He doesn't need the money. Right now, what he needs is, can I get the success? Because people have spoken so many things. So how do I incorporate all this and make Africa great again? I think if he starts it on a positive, building those bridges and those structures, African football will start rising. And as much as FIFA, people may think FIFA, no, the man has to now manage himself, because if he lets it now on the hands of FIFA, as people are trying to say per se, it's not going to be good for us. But I believe, let's give him time. African football is going to grow. This is a man who's not had this mud. All these people, even the vice president, I'm sorry to say, all of them were in this mud. When Ahmad was doing these things, they were there. So who was the best leader? A leader who does not have these things. He has his own flaws, but right now, if you look at it clearly, he was the best favorite. Even without anything, the man who's going to win. Because if you look at it in a holistic manner, African football has missed a man who basically will want to even bring his friends into the from the corporate world and come. Let me tell you, according to one factor that I basically overheard, and which is really exciting me, the number of corporates that have already lined up to bring money to CAF. Imagine in the first month. That is great news for football, because football industry in Africa must be appreciated. It's $1 billion industry, but you are not cultivating it properly.
Yeah, I think you meant the idea of building a team. I think that's leadership. Building a strong team will be very instrumental for Dr. Motsepe's reign as CAF president. And already we know in his team he has Agustin Senghor, he has Ahmed Yahya, and the most recent to also step down in his favor, Mr. Jacques Anuma. So already he has these experienced football administrators at his disposal. So the question will be how does he manage their interest? And you have mentioned previously the issue of Anglophone, Francophone. These are issues that have been affecting African football for a long time, and we don't expect them to go away. We can't wish them away. They will be there, and that is why there had to be that kind of high-level negotiation to make sure everybody's interests are taken care of, and at the same time, FIFA also is on the table. How do you think Mr. Motsepe will manage that, Collins? We'll stay with you for a bit.
Let's be sincere. That is a very crucial point, because as you see it right now, people have got their interest. I will not deny that, because that is where problems come. But now that is the point. You know what Hamad, the advantage that Hamad got when he came in, Hamad basically was giving, he was giving the words, tell, do this, do that. But for Motsepe, you come in like it's a team. So people also have in the team, they want to come with their interest. I want to bring my person as the Secretary General. I want to bring my person as the head of communication. But I think Motsepe, being that he's been in leadership at that capacity, for Motsepe, it's like, let's be serious, it's like getting someone from university and then you bring him back to secondary, you see, because he's past the level. So in the managerial part, I think he's able, because look at the team at CAF. There are special people there. Anthony Bafo, look at such people. That's a legend who basically speaks 5 languages. Look at Solomon Adamu, head of competition. They are bright people, but people that have not been allowed to do their job, holistically and free from interference. The first thing that he has to do is to make sure that the administration, that is the CAF secretariat, must be allowed to do its work, because interference has been the key. There's an appointment of a referee, there's an EXCO member who wants to basically come in. These guys that you've talked about, like Senghor, and yeah, they are supposed to be just the guardians, but there's the secretariat that delivers. As long as there's political will up there, then down here things are going to work. But if there's infighting in the office and all that, these secretaries always fail, because people tend to sideline or step to on the other side. Like, I'm so and so's person, I'm Senghor's person, I am Anuma's person. That is now what is not treated. As much as they are the vice president, the president, they have to know that African football is now bigger than them. This issue whereby they thought that they are bigger than football will no longer be entertained, because that is what has brought problems in the past administration. So I think they can go through that business and all that. He has the capacity to, many you have to buy everything, and utmost you have to know that it is not business as usual. Bring your friends, you have to bring people that know what they're supposed to do and what they're supposed to do.
Sorry, thank you, Colin. So, some on the same issue. What role do you think these candidates who have stepped down will play? How will they affect the leadership of CAF really going forward? From your view, from your perspective, how will it play out going forward? Because these are people who all had their different manifestos. So there's a lot of similarities in whatever they were putting out. But how is this going to affect the leadership of CAF going forward? Are we going to see a stronger CAF?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. It will be an interesting dynamic how those candidates that stood down will work with Mr. Motsepe. What I'm also really curious about is, remember that Mr. Motsepe has an awful lot of interests, his mining empire, he has launched a bank, he's invested in telecoms, he does philanthropy. So he has an awful lot of interests as well. So I'm just wondering as well how he will step down from Mamelodi Sundowns as owner, as Collins also pointed out. So I'm just wondering how keen, how much his eye will really be on the ball, because he has so many interests. But at least I think that's where those other candidates can potentially come in, and that is sort of to guide him with some of the experience that they have and have had in the corridors of power and in the corridors of CAF. But yes, so there is that's one side of the equation. The other side of the equation is obviously, if we do accept that Gianni Infantino had a hand in Motsepe's election, as one of the viewers also pointed out in her question, how will that affect Motsepe's decision-making in the future? Because up to now, Africa and FIFA have had a sort of especially from the African point of view, a sort of relationship of dependency, you know, on the FIFA funds. But if we do accept that Mr. Infantino had a hand in Mr. Motsepe's election, then it will be very interesting to see how that pans out in the future in terms of decision making at the top of CAF.
Great stuff. So as we come towards the end of this particular show, maybe it's just to understand to see what are the priorities for the incoming leadership at CAF. One of our viewers here, Fred, talks about media rights and things like that. What are some of the priorities, Collins, do you think will be on Dr. Motsepe's to-do list immediately?
As Fred has pointed out, it's so sad and absurd that we are in Africa. We cannot watch a CAF Champions League, but you can watch an English Premier League. You know, that is a big embarrassment. So Motsepe's his plate is full, by the way. By the time he gets in, this issue that has been dragging itself with Lagardère, he has to sort it out immediately, because that has been the ball of contention. Lagardère, basically, the rights that were given were so, the many years. And, it brought them down because it's a case in court. And, what CAF will be made to pay is colossal. So this is one thing that Motsepe must really and immediately settle down and conclude it amicably, because it has dragged down and now it's affecting Africa. Because without TV, how do you even say we are exposing our talent? It's difficult, because we can't have just a few corporates that can basically manage this. So that is one key thing that he has to do. Then the second thing that he has to do is basically, look at the structures. We've had an African Cup of Nations that is basically played 2 years, 4 years. There have been a lot of sentiments. I remember we were all of us were in the Morocco symposium where a lot of things were spoken. So some of these things, you have to look at them. Were they implemented in a hurry? Did they really help? Like, you look at how the countries that are supposed to be hosting AFCON, the way things are happening. So are we supposed to, because there are people who are coming up with sentiments that African Cup of Nations must go 4 years. Some are saying it must go 2 years. These are some of the worries that he must, put down and basically look at it critically with the experts. What is the best solution to the African game, you see? And then the other thing is basically to try and encourage more cooperative into the African game, because right now, they're going, you could realize that there are so many holes, you see. And then one thing that he must never forget, and this thing we keep on saying it in symposiums, it's women football. The capacity is there, but we keep on saying we're going to push this. We keep on making nice structured announcements, but nothing happens. The youth and women, they are very, very important structure into African football. If you do not put concentration in the underage, the under 20, the under 17, we'll never go forward. That is where we go wrong. That's why we've not even reached the World Cup semi-final, something that must be looked into, because we're in Africa where a lot of talent comes from, but this talent is only benefiting the West. How is it benefiting us as Africa? Those are some of the very fundamental things that Motsepe must look at and bring back stability and confidence to every stakeholder. Because these issues that have been happening there with pilferage and all this, you have to have structures that can basically, they can be checks and measures of what is happening. Right now, as we're talking, CAF was an institution that was paying everyone cash. You go for a tournament, you work for 30 days, you're paid $10,000. But those are the things that were leading to this corruption. But right now, that is now been shut. Right now, there's a longer cash payment. That is a step in the right direction, because if we seal the loopholes, then Africa will start changing, because we cannot use Africa as a cookie jar for people to enrich themselves while football suffers.
Yeah, so promoting of good governance. What about you, Samindra? What do you think are the priority areas for Dr. Motsepe when he comes in as the new CAF president on Friday, especially when it comes to strengthening Africa's place in global football?
Yeah, I think I largely agree with what Colin said there, picking up from his lovely cookie jar metaphor. I think, yeah, finances, the no CAF leadership will definitely have to sort out the finances. We don't need to explain what happened with Lagardère. Again, CAF has assets, but it is cash strapped, and that is very, very problematic. So that will be the first area that the no CAF president will have to look at. And then secondly, I would say the football development aside, I would also definitely point at good governance and ethics. That's key at CAF, an organization that for so long has been bedeviled by corruption. One of the interesting thing is that I spoke to quite a lot of people who worked with Motsepe in the 90s in the mining industry back in South Africa, when he was trying to make it as sort of the first black miner in the country. Not taking on, but at least working with Anglo-American, the biggest miners in the world at the time. And the people that worked with Motsepe at the time, from the Union to Anglo-American, they have told me that, for what it's worth, obviously, that Mr. Motsepe values good governance, and in all his operations and in his modus operandi is very ethical. So that's one thing that we could perhaps point out. At the same time, I think during his manifesto launch, Mr. Motsepe said that he's thinking of a one-term presidency, and to sort of get African football back on the right track and to clean up what needs to be cleaned up. A one-term presidency seems very short. It seems very naive to me that you can achieve all what needs to be achieved in such a short space of time. And then there will always be the question as in how far that the CAF presidency, no president will perhaps facilitate some of the agenda that Zurich and FIFA have in mind.
Super. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me today to discuss this very important subject. Maybe I just invite you again quickly to make your concluding remarks, starting with you, Collins, and then we'll finish with you, Samindra. Indeed, I think we should be positive, optimistic about what is going to happen with African football in the coming years. And it all depends on the leadership, and not only leadership at the CAF level, but down to a federation and at all levels in the continent. So, Collins, please, your concluding remarks.
Yeah, thank you so much. Africa has seen a lot of turbulent times in the past 2 years, and it's been crazy. But I think with the new dispensation, things are changing right now, and I believe it is time for change. And let me tell you, when there's proper leadership at CAF, the same positive effect trickles down to even the federation. Because once things are being done properly up top in Africa, even the FA presidents who sometimes do these things you're talking about are going to be prevalent and basically say, now this is how to run football. So I believe it is time for change. Motsepe has it on his hand. It is for him now to basically tell people the same way that I've built my Mamelodi Sundown, the same way that I've built my businesses, is the same way that Africa is going to go forward. And I think that if we have with everyone and the support that is going to be getting, then Africa is in the way forward. And I think things are going to be better, unlike before we've been suffering for the past 4 years.
Thank you, Collins. What about you, Sam? Concluding remarks?
Yeah, I think that Mr. Motsepe is mainly being presented as the candidate, and he will be the next CAF boss of change. And that is the question we all have. Will he be that game changer? I have to say, when I look at his track record in football, and especially at Mamelodi Sundowns, it's one thing to have your business acumen and to have built a mining empire. But for all those billions and all that wealth, that doesn't necessarily make you qualified to be the next CAF president. And perhaps the way that he has gotten to the top job will not be appreciated everywhere in Africa. So that's a big caveat as well, how united will the CAF electorate and African football be going forward. Some might perhaps feel that this president has been superimposed on them. But so for all his history and business acumen, I still find, if we look at Motsepe, purely the candidate and his background and track record in football, as successful as Mamelodi Sundowns are, I still find his track record lacks a bit of substance to become CAF president and execute that role to the best in the best possible way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you very much for your views, and thank you as well to our audience for engaging us. We have some comments still coming in. CAF desperately needs better leadership. I hope the new leadership inspires hope for a better future. That is Wycliffe Wekesanjorai Simiyu. Also have a comment from Judith Njoki here. The next CAF leadership should be more interaction with the teams on the ground, less in desk operations. So that's all about secretariat operations and how they will be able to get to the ground. So thank you very much, Samindra Kunti from Inside World Football, and Colin Sokinyo, ex-CAF media expert, and also still very much in the digital space. Thank you for taking the time to join us to discuss this very important event coming up on Friday, which is the CAF General Assembly, as well as the elections. Now we won't have much of an election, but basically just the passing of Dr. Patrice Motsepe as the next CAF president. We also take this opportunity to thank our sponsors, that is OTB Africa, Parmas, and See Beyond Leadership Forum for making these possible. And not forgetting our collaborators for these series of the Africa Football Business Show, Sports Legal. And last but not least, our always great audience. Thank you for joining us today, and please do come back for other shows. We are always discussing interesting topics here, hoping to create conversations that really can drive the Africa football industry forward. So with that, I wish you all a lovely evening, lovely day, and yeah, see you next time on the Africa Football Business Show. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.